Oh, good.
Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by Mr. Dimitri Cherny. He is running for Congress in South Carolina, District 1. He is running as a progressive Republican. So I know that's kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but we have seen a few people do that strategically this year. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dimitri. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Joy. Let me just clarify that I'm not running as a Republican. I'm running in the Republican primary because
Right.
here in South Carolina, these are open primaries, and basically you to get in any primary to get on the ballot, you simply pay your $3,480 and you decide, do I want to pay it to the Republican Party, which I'll tell you, it really kind of hurts. But or you pay to the Democratic Party, and those are your only two choices. And running as an independent or running in as a Green Party member or Working Families Party, those things you really can't do effectively. So if you want, I'll go into it right here. The reason I'm doing this year is I ran in 2016. I actually ran in 2014 too as a write-in candidate, as an independent write-in candidate. And that's when I realized that you really just can't run as an independent in South Carolina effectively. So you have to be in either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and those are your only two choices. So in 2016, I paid my $3,480 to the Democratic Party, and I was on the Democratic ticket. And fortunately, my only primary contender dropped out. He wasn't able to raise the money, and so I was on the ballot. And I ended up winning, I ended up winning. Yeah, I won the primary because there was no primary. But I ended up at the end of the campaign, and there's a whole lot of story in between that we can go through if you'd like. But I ended up getting more votes than anybody had ever gotten in the 1st Congressional District as a Democratic candidate before. And in fact, I got more votes than any other Democratic congressional candidate in 2016 in other parts of the state, and there were five other districts where candidates were running, and unfortunately, we all lost by 70,000 votes or more. In fact, that was sort of the magic number, 70,000. And when I look back on the candidate that ran in my district in 2012, she also lost by 70,000 votes. So I kind of scratched my head for a couple of days and said, what's going on with this 70,000 votes thing? And realized that's the evidence for gerrymandering. And so for a couple of days, I thought, well, how could I ever possibly get 70,000 additional votes? Because I got more votes than anybody had ever gotten by 15,000 votes in that district. And I didn't think there was anything I could do that would actually get another 70,000 votes. And here was the interesting test for that. I raised and spent only $28,000 in 2016. I did nothing by the book, and yet I got better results than anybody else had. And other guys in the other districts around South Carolina, some of them raised as much as $70,000, and they did worse than I did. So I thought, so money isn't the key here in South Carolina. And maybe in other states where things are closer, but here in South Carolina where the gerrymandering is so strong and the association that people have with parties, basically here in South Carolina, let me tell you this. For the rest of the people around the country, you're not going to believe it, but things are very, very racist here in South Carolina still. Basically, racism and racist policies drive this entire state. People that are raised in South Carolina white are Republicans. That's all there is to it. They identify as Republicans, and they would never vote for a Democrat, and they would never vote on a Democratic primary because they don't see themselves as being members of the Black Party, which is what the Democratic Party is in South Carolina. So it's really tough to overcome the gerrymandering here and the way things are built. But fortunately, back in 1960s, when the civil rights era was happening, the state legislature decided that they wanted to go with open primaries because suddenly there were, 1 million black voters that had never been able to vote before, and the white party at the time it was the Democrats or the Dixiecrats, they wanted to have a measure of control over that. And so they came up with open primaries where they could always run their fake Democrat candidates in the Democratic primaries and win. And they've been doing that now for 50 years to great effect. Nobody's ever done it back to them. So I'm the first one that's doing it right back to them. And I'll tell you what, the Republican Party in South Carolina is kind of freaking out. And literally after 4 days after I had announced this, they decided that they're going to put on the ballot this year, in the primary ballot, a question that asked people, should we close primaries or should we keep them open or not, because they're so concerned about this. So I've caused a lot of stir down here in South Carolina. And what's interesting is that, the Democrats have for years been pounding their heads against the wall and not getting anywhere. And they constantly lose by 15 points or so, just simply because of the gerrymandering, and yet they keep on trying. I have this personal mantra that I never make the same mistake twice. And so I learned last time, and I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. So I decided I'm going to run in the Republican primary instead. I'm going to see if I can get 30,000 or 40,000 or 50,000 of my people that voted for me in 2016 to vote this year in the Republican primary, because it's open primaries. You walk in, you ask for the Republican ballot or you ask for the Democratic ballot, and that's it. And you vote whichever way you want. So it's kind of nice that way. So I'm experimenting. I'm seeing whether I can get 30, 40, 50,000 people to cross lines for the primary, see the greater strategy here, and elect me as the, strangely enough, the Republican candidate, because I'd be the only Republican candidate in the country with a Bernie tattoo on one arm, and then I got this tattoo on the other arm. So I think there'll be Republican heads exploding all over the country on June 13th, the day after the primary, if I actually win the nomination.
Hell, I'll settle for anyone with tattoos in Congress at this point. But Bernie one's absolutely. So just to explain the process, because I've interviewed almost 70 candidates now, and I learn, so much about each state. It's so different. As far as voting rules and everything like that. Should you win the primary, then what happens? You become an independent?
If I win the primary, I am the Republican candidate.
You are still, okay.
Yeah, and so I would go up against whoever the Democratic candidate is. I know most of the people running in that primary, and they're both good people. And I know I'd make a better congressperson than either of them for numerous reasons, MMT being one of them, Joy. And but still, I'd go up against them. And if I happen to lose, as we still get a Democrat in there, so it'll still be okay. But I would prefer to win. This is my third time doing this, and I got into this as I told you earlier today, just for the viewers at home. Joy asked me if I knew what MMT is, and I said, yeah, I'm actually a personal friend of Warren's, and I was driving trucks in 2011, and I was listening to podcasts and audiobooks and things like that, and there was a comment on something that I read that just mentioned modern monetary theory, so I tracked that down and entered the rabbit hole. And for about 2 weeks, I read and viewed everything I could possibly find about MMT. And one day, I woke up in my cab. I'm driving big rigs all over the country. Woke up in my cab and I was like, "Oh my God! Like, understand now. This means we can spend whatever we want on whatever we have to spend on, and it blew my mind. So that's what led me to initially run in 2014. That nobody was running against Mark Sanford. He was unopposed at the closing of the period, the filing period. And so I thought, well, why don't I just try this and see? This maybe could be a bully pulpit for me to talk about MMT, and it kind of was. So I did it again in 2016, and now, of course, I'm doing it again now in 2018. So,
do people seem receptive when you try to explain it?
No, of course not. we all know how it is, huh? It's such a foreign concept, mostly because it's entirely the opposite of what we've been taught and what we understand for our personal finances. So it's really, really tough. What I'm finding is younger people under the age of 30, or still college kids, are much more receptive to the whole thing. And frankly, that's where I'm focusing all my efforts on this campaign, people under the age of 30. So if you see crazy stuff from me out there, just think that maybe what it would look like to a 22-year-old instead.
Well, you've gotten to know me this week, and even though I'm almost 40, I have the mind of an 18-year-old, so you know that's why I always put laugh emojis on your stuff, because I find it hilarious, so it works. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. As far as your what you've done lately, you spoke at a 420 rally. What was that like? What was the atmosphere? Who asked you to go? What's your stance?
Well, I've been kind of plugged into the whole the normal crew for a number of years, and I mean the whole idea about cannabis of any sort being illegal is just kind of insane. And when you look at the history of it, it's clearly something that was done from a racist perspective. When you look back on the Nixon administration, in fact, in that movie 13th, they go through that really well. But I'd seen it in other places too, and it was entirely a racist policy. So I think it's well beyond the time that all cannabis products, both hemp and marijuana, should be completely legalized, completely normalized. And more importantly, all of the people that we've criminalized and we put in prison and jail for the past 50 years should immediately be released and retrained and given first dibs on running cannabis businesses. I think we've done a huge injustice to those people. And frankly, I know a number of people, some have become my personal friends, who'd spent time in jail for cannabis or cocaine or something along those lines. But it's a huge waste of human talent that we've done through this whole policy. So it's just time to legalize it, and not even to mention the medical benefits. And I have numerous friends who are swearing by CBD and other cannabis products, really doing things that no pharmaceutical can do. So it just makes a lot of sense.
It does, and it's, as we've seen in other states, it's really good for the economy as well. As you do actually, as far as medicinal purposes and everything, we can kind of jump to Medicare for all. So I love how on your website it says Bernie's Medicare for all. I'm like, yeah, because he's the one that really taught people. A lot of people didn't know what it was before he brought it to light. So you do support Medicare for all. And then, I have a couple of people asking, how do you explain when somebody says, how are you going to pay for it? What's kind of your process? What do you tell them?
About Medicare for all?
Or anything, quite frankly.
Universal health care, it's I recorded a new 1-minute video today, and one of the things I'm doing in these videos is I'm addressing younger people, and I recognized from a lot of them that they didn't have much of a civics training at all. And an awful lot of younger Americans, and I guess all Americans in general, haven't traveled anywhere else in the world. And when you travel to other places in the world, you realize how much better things are in so many other countries than they are here. So the thing I say to people is, there are a couple of dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen, it's 38, 40 countries out there that have universal health care right now. And a good story was a friend of mine was in Croatia and came down with some internal problem where he needed immediate surgery. And in Croatia is a country literally the size of South Carolina. It's like 4 million people. It's a little bit physically smaller than we are here. But they rushed him to the hospital and took care of him. And he was in there for like a week. And when they wheel him out, he goes to the front desk and he says, how can I pay you? And he tries to give them his credit card. And they go, no, you don't have to pay. He's like, well, what about? He says, no, this is okay. It's all taken care of. We have, universal health care here. So
even though he wasn't even a resident,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't even live there. He's an American, but he has universal health care while he's in Croatia. What the hell? Why do we have people dying here? This is ridiculous because we can't afford things. I know so many people that are sick because they didn't go to the hospital, the doctor, because they couldn't afford the $100 payment, whatever it was. It's just another one of these things that's well beyond the time that we need to fix this.
Absolutely. And it also goes with big pharma. So it's one thing to fight for Medicare for all, but we absolutely have to take on big pharma, and put caps on prices, things like that. Is that something you would also work for, in Congress?
The way I look at it is there are some things that people should be able to make a profit on and actually get rich off of. And there are other things that, no, you shouldn't be able to get rich off of. Yes, people should be able to earn a good living. I mean, okay, the president of Merck or the CEO or whatever should make whatever the going rate is for CEOs, but it shouldn't be a corporation where investors are making a killing off of this whole thing. And this guy shouldn't be making millions of dollars, or all of the heads of these organizations. So there are lots of industries that should just be cooperative, collectives, whatever, where we don't actually make millions of dollars off of these things. And that's one of them. I mean, pharma, a hospital, healthcare, public transportation, maybe even communications. I mean, right now, what we're doing right here is so critical to all of us. Why are people making millions of dollars off of the internet, the transmission of all the data around there? So there are a lot of things that simply should not be something that you can make a killing off of. And big pharma, obviously, is one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked in healthcare for almost 10 years, and so unfortunately I see the so-called price we pay and the price that it's billed for, and yeah. I write some of this stuff down, and I'm like, I am so disgusted, especially because I've worked in Medicare, so I see it, and it's just, and then Bernie came out with that legislation where he was going to put a cap on pharmaceuticals, and people like Cory Booker did not sign, even though he's, considered this progressive Democrat. So that bill needs to come around again, for sure. Because that's definitely a huge part of Medicare for all. There's something else you talk about on your page is big money in politics. So is it safe to assume you do not accept any PAC money or anything like that?
Yeah. No, I don't think PAC people or corporations or anybody is ever going to look at me, because I am clearly the guy that is not supporting anything that they're doing. So no, if they offered me any money, no, I wouldn't take any of that at all. I mean, when I ran in 2016, I think my biggest donor, yeah, that's right, my biggest donor was a local Hispanic restaurant owner. In fact, my three biggest donors were my local Hispanic restaurant owners. I think I got like $800 from each of those guys. And after that, it was probably my sister. So I'm not in any kind of danger of getting money from anybody along those lines. And like I said, in 2016, I raised $28,000. For this primary, I don't think I'm gonna raise $5,000. I mean, if I win this thing, who knows what's going to happen? Other than Republican heads exploding all over the country, but I don't think I'm going to be raising a whole lot of money. But here's the interesting thing. I think I proved in 2016 that you don't have to raise a whole lot of money to win or to do well. And I think I'm going to be able to prove it again this year. And I really think what I'm doing here, I can easily do for just a few $1,000s and potentially win this primary, because I don't need that many voters out there. And as long as I'm doing this sort of under the radar, as long as Real Progressives is under the radar. This doesn't go out to any Republicans, does it? As long as this is under the radar.
Hey, we have 121,000 followers, so I don't know what kind of, I'm sure we've got all kinds of people out here. We have some trolls who are probably Republicans. But
let me just say this. Mark Sanford, if you're watching this right now, turn off the audio.
All right, so let's hear about this fella. What makes you different? Why does he fuel you to take him on?
It's really interesting. This last year I was away from South Carolina. I was back up in my hometown of Vermont to be near my mom. And my mom is aging and kind of losing her mind a little bit, a lot. And so I wanted to be near her. I missed that opportunity with my dad. So I wanted to take this opportunity. And it gave me the time and the space to reflect on a lot of things that I hadn't really had a whole lot of time to think about after the campaign. When you're in campaign mode, you're constantly thinking of the next thing, the next event, how many events you can go to. And I realized that Mark Sanford and I are kind of two sides of the same coin. We're both the same age. I think he's maybe a month older than me. We're both 57 years old. We're both male. We're both white. We're both cisgender. We're both straight. We're both raised in upper middle class families. We're both relatively healthy. We're both, pretty good looking, and honestly, that makes a difference. And yet, we, through our life experiences, have come up with entirely different conclusions about the way the world should work. So he's an interesting guy to go up against because we are at polar opposites from ideologies. He's a Freedom Caucus member, and his biggest concern is the debt and the deficit. And I've written a number of essays, and in 2016 I had a really good newspaper article published about his penny plan, where he wanted to reduce the debt by a penny for every single dollar that was being spent in America, federal spending. And it was, just crazy, nonsensical stuff when you understand the way monetary systems actually work. And so I describe this. Anybody that will sit down and listen for 10 minutes, I'll go through this whole thing with them. And here's the interesting thing that I'm doing differently this year. It used to be we'd go, well, this is the other way to think of it. Now I'm saying, no, this is the way it works. That's what I'm saying to people. This is the way it works. This is facts. These are the facts of how monetary systems work. And everything you know and everything you think you understand is wrong. And whoever you learn that from is wrong, because these are the facts. And for a lot of people, just being firm about it like that is kind of convincing, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And now with the interwebs, we have videos and articles and everything to back up what we're saying, which is really nice.
It is.
But kind of in the same realm as MMT, do you support a federal job guarantee?
What's that? I've never heard of that.
Are you serious?
Of course not. Pavlina's a friend of mine.
I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, I've supported an awful lot of the MMT stuff long before Bernie did. And, if you go back to, well, it's not up there anymore, but my 2014 website, I went through all of this stuff, federal job guarantee, and everything out there. So yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I've taken it to levels of detail that I haven't seen Pavlina take it to, and I've taken other things to levels of detail that I haven't seen Warren take it through, or Randy, or any of the other guys out there. So it's pretty interesting. I guess I'm more at the bleeding edge than a lot of people are willing to go, because I have nothing to lose on this thing. So.
Yeah, well, that's true. What is the unemployment rate in your state? Is it do you have a lot of people in poverty? Do you have a lot of homelessness?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. The official unemployment rate right now is pretty low. I think it's like 4% or something like that. But there are a considerable number of homeless people. As is happening all over the country, there are a lot more and more people out on the streets. I was homeless in 2010. I had had I guess it was divinely inspired loss of everything, and I for whatever reason I could not find a job to do anything. This is after a 26-year career in the high-tech industry. And I'd started a renewable energy company, couldn't find any additional investment, and I had spent every penny that I had ever earned over my previous 26 years, which was a considerable amount of money. And I was living out of my car in California, in the Bay Area, hoping for a call back for some jobs. And then ended up sleeping on my nephew's couch in Salt Lake City for a couple of months. And every day I'm applying to jobs on Monster.com and all these other things. And I applied to hundreds, thousands of jobs. And as an expert in my industry, that was the really bizarre thing about it. I couldn't get a job to save my life. This is at the end of 2010, and so I was about to literally write a sign, because I'd borrowed all the money I possibly could from people, and I was about to write a sign and go beg at the bottom of an exit ramp, and I saw an ad for truck driving school come up on Monster.com, and so I looked up and said, "What, this is what you want me to be? You want me to be a truck driver?" So I went to truck driving school and drove big rigs for 18 months, and it was it's a horrible life. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I guess there are some people that kind of enjoy that if they're real loners. But I realized a lot of things about myself. But the whole time I was in that truck for 18 months, and then I did it for 2.5 years out of the ports here in Charleston. I never once turned on the radio, and I just listened to podcasts and read audio, or listened to audiobooks, and basically studied economics. That's how I found MMT, and studied American history. I was trying to figure out how this could happen to me. Here was a guy. I was 50 years old, and an expert in my field. I was an expert in 3 different fields over my previous 26 years, 3 different industries that I've been in. And within a year, I was an expert in my field. And yet I was spit out of the economy. And I thought, how could a guy who's male, white, cisgender, straight, smart, all of the benefits that our society demands, if I could get spit out of this economy, how much worse could it be for other people? And that kind of led me down this whole path towards where I want to make changes to help people that are less fortunate, that aren't born with, don't have the advantages that a lot of us have.
Absolutely. I could see you totally as a gypsy, but not a truck driver. I could totally see you just kind of hitchhiking and going. See, you guys have to learn, Dimitri loves karaoke, so if you were undecided, now you know that he's amazing. Apparently you're winning people over because you joshed me, and I fell for it. So that's good. People like that. Something else, obviously very important, is climate change. You do put that on your website, but do you want to kind of elaborate? What things are you passionate about?
Well, that's really the underlying thing that changed my whole life, and it was 2006, 2007, when Al Gore's movie came out. I probably saw it a year later, and after seeing his movie, Inconvenient Truth, and I'd known this stuff, and I'd been a little ecologist my whole life. I was born in 1960, so the first Earth Day, I was a 9-year-old kid walking around my neighborhood with a trash bag, picking stuff up, and I had studied all sorts of ecology. I thought I was going to be a ranger at a national park, so I was always interested in what was going on. And but seeing Al Gore's movie again at 47 years old, I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing? I was working for IBM at the time. I'd switched over into sales, and I had a sales region, the New England sales region, and I was selling IT software to IT companies in the Fortune 500. And trying to save them. This was our argument. Our return on investment was, I can save you 1% on your IT budget if you buy our stuff over somebody else's stuff. 1% on their $5 million IT budget. And that was what I was doing. And I thought to myself, after seeing Al Gore's movie, I am wasting my talents. I am wasting my life. And what am I going to tell my grandkids in 40 years when shit happens, when the oceans are rising, and when storms are getting really bad, and when harvests aren't coming in? What am I going to tell them that I did back then when it was finally clear to all of us what was going on? So that started me down this whole path. And I had a midlife crisis at that point, or at the start of it. It's not over yet.
I'm having a midlife crisis.
It's been 11 years. When does it end? I ended up leaving IBM and wanted to take the summer off and just kind of rethink things. And then when I tried to get a job again at the end of the summer, I found I couldn't get anything. And I came up with an idea for a renewable energy company. What's called airborne wind energy. I ended up coming up with a design. I got a patent on it. I got some investment, and tried to get some additional investment. I needed to move south, here to South Carolina. That's why I ended up in South Carolina in 2010 for testing reasons. I was up in New Hampshire, and you couldn't do all these flight tests, these flying vehicles. You couldn't do all these flight tests up in New Hampshire in the wintertime. So I needed a place that was better for that. And that's how I ended up getting down here to South Carolina. And then, of course, the whole thing with getting homeless, and then all that happened after that.
I really appreciate you opening up about that. I know a lot of people in the comments are say that it's very humbling. And quite honestly, the more you can relate to people like that, the better person you're going to be representing us in Congress.
I think what I found is an awful lot of us go through really difficult times. But we all have to put on these fake faces that, things are going well. I mean, and social media is part of that. LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, oh my God, what a joke. go check out my LinkedIn page. And for a number of years, I had come up with a very complicated euphemism for a truck driver. And just in the last few months, after this long title, I forgot what it was, International Supply Chain Coordinator or something like that, and I put in parentheses afterwards, truck driver. But everybody goes through this stuff, and I've found it's refreshing for everybody to hear the truth that it's not as easy as the people who are really succeeding in our society are making it seem like. And for an awful lot of us, and I always say this, I think 75% of us are living paycheck to paycheck, and without $1,000 in the bank. And up until I paid my $3,480 to file to run here, that was the first time in years that I'd had a few $1,000s in the bank. And now, I'm living. Well, I don't have paychecks anymore because I'm doing this full time. So I'm living off.
Did you at least raise that much?
Say that again.
Back?
What?
Did you at least raise like 3,500?
Well, I'm hoping not yet. So nothing yet. So yeah. I mean, well, a little bit right now, but no, that's what I'm hoping. I'll be able to pay myself back and then live over the summer just off of my savings that I already spent to do all of this stuff. But it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see. I mean, I guess I have some good friends that will probably chip in, enough for me to survive out here. But,
well, we have a lot of people watching right now too. So hopefully they will, because you're getting a lot of compliments in the thread. So I definitely want you to check out the comments after the show. So we have a mutual friend, Trisha. I'm not sure if she's watching, but she sends me a lot of information about the prison system. And it's really bad where you guys are, like super bad. It's bad in a lot of places, but the conditions that they have these people living in, especially people of color, are disgusting. Yep. So what should you get into Congress? What are your proposals about getting rid of for-profit prisons?
I mean, I have, again, living here in South Carolina, it's an extremely racist society. And because this is where the Confederacy started, and there are still a bunch of crazy people who are all about that. I've learned from a lot of people, because there are as many good people on the other side of the aisle. And a friend of mine, a little shout out here, Max Parthas, friend him on Facebook. He is abolitionist extraordinaire. And I met Max, I guess it was at a Black Lives Matter rally that we had done up in Columbia some years ago. I was one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter here in Charleston a number of years ago. And so we went to a lot of things. I learned an awful lot. It was a fantastic education for me. But Max, in 15 minutes, will explain to you how slavery has never ended. And it really comes down to the 13th Amendment, which was what Lincoln had created, that ended slavery. But it didn't end slavery. It shifted slavery from the public to the prisons. And because of that has allowed for-profit prisons and all sorts of abuses out there. So I think the key to ending for-profit prisons is first to what they call abolish the exception clause in the 13th Amendment. It says slavery is forbidden in the United States except for people convicted of a crime, blah, blah, blah. And we need to end that. Slavery needs to end entirely everywhere in the United States. And then we can go and fix everything else. But again, this is one of those things where why should people be making a profit off of the suffering of other people? And you look at to go to Bernie's standard thing. Look at the Nordic countries, what they do for prisons, and it's definitely rehabilitation instead of punishment.
Absolutely.
And here in America, and especially here in South Carolina, and especially all of the previous slave states, it's all about punishment. And even the police forces down here are all about punishment and getting people into the jails. And really there's this whole slave catcher mentality when you look at the history of where police forces came from. Here in the South, police forces were originally slave catchers. And that is the continuation of the whole slave catcher mentality. And that is just something that has to end. But we have, every few weeks it seems like, some horrible police shooting of some guy for nothing. What are the latest things you can't do while you're black? I mean, it's pretty much everything. That's it. I'm sitting right now at Starbucks. If I were black, no, I wouldn't be able to be sitting right here. They would have called the cops on me by now. So yeah, so that's prisons are one of the things that should not be for profit at all. They should be run by the state. They should be set up as an opportunity to give these poor people, it's usually guys, and I have numerous friends now that have been through the prison system here in South Carolina, give them the education that they missed, and help them to get back into society and to be productive members of society. And most of these guys are pretty smart, especially the guys that were running some big drug operations. I mean, they're incredibly good organizers. And so, yeah, it was, they're good guys. But the problem is bigger than that. The problem is that we've neglected, especially here in South Carolina, we've neglected public education. And the same thing is happening in every community around the country where there aren't lots of rich people, because we're funding education through local taxes. It's something like 7% of public education around the country is funded through the federal government. We need to change that. We need to make it so that something like 50% of public education is funded through the federal government, and make it so that every single kid in America has an equal high quality education, that it isn't dependent on zip code. It isn't dependent on their local property taxes coming in. And everybody needs to have that opportunity, because that's why these guys, lots of my friends, got out of high school, number one, miseducated, uneducated, because of the crappy school systems they have here in South Carolina and other places around the country. If you're living out in the sticks somewhere, you're definitely going to get a crappy education. And what are they trained to do in the end? Their best opportunities are selling drugs or doing something illegal, because, there's nothing else out here. The local economies in an awful lot of the downtrodden areas of South Carolina have collapsed, entirely collapsed. And it's just poor planning overall, because of what? Because of capitalism, bottom line. Because of unfettered free market capitalism. I'm a huge capitalist, but I am not an unfettered free market capitalist. We need to put strict boundaries around what you can do in capitalism. What are things that you can actually make a profit on? What are things that should not be made a profit on?
Yeah, absolutely. And Beverly in the comments brings up a very good point. If we had a federal job guarantee and these people, especially these people of color, get out of jail, they want jobs, we're good. So that would definitely be advantageous as well.
Can I expand on that a little bit? So I'm taking it further, the whole job guarantee. What I want the job guarantee to be is a grant program for entrepreneurs, because I haven't seen a good description yet of how the job guarantee actually is managed. Everybody keeps saying, oh, they do these jobs and those jobs. You know what I think would be better is we make it so that kids coming out of high school, anybody that even has an idea, can apply for a job guarantee grant. And they say, I want to do this business that is a business that no for-profit corporation would ever do, because it can't be profitable. But I will employ 6 people this first year, and then maybe 10 people the next year. and here's my business proposal, and this is how many dollars I'd need, and you apply to the job guarantee program, you get the grant. And now suddenly we have all of these entrepreneurs out there who are starting up businesses that nobody else would ever start up because these are things that aren't for profit. So this could be a huge boon for an awful lot of people in, again, downtrodden areas in South Carolina, wherever, all around the country. And it would also make it so that we would have to teach our kids entrepreneurship in our high schools, teach kids how to write business plans, teach kids how to run businesses, teach them how to do finances, all that stuff. And so they come out and they're not just looking for a job because, jobs suck. I mean, think about it. Jobs suck. I've been an entrepreneur. I've started 3 different companies, and I've worked for a couple of other companies over my lifetime that have been pretty good. But it's awfully fun to have your own company and to make it so that you get up after 6 hours of sleep and you're all excited to go to work. I want more people to feel that, especially young people. And again, if somebody fails in a business idea, so what? The money went out there. It guaranteed jobs for a number of people. But I think that's the whole cycle, the capitalist cycle, the entrepreneurial cycle that we need to create more of here in the United States.
Yeah, Mark actually stated community. Let me see how he worded it. Community administered and federally funded. That's definitely awesome because it gets more people involved and it forces them to be innovative rather than just sitting in a cubicle.
Along those lines, let me tell you about another idea I had. When I was driving trucks out of the ports here in Charleston, I was taking containers. We have a very big container port. I think it may be the largest container, or maybe the second largest container port on the eastern coast. And so I was driving containers up about 300, 400, about 600 miles a day. So I go as far as 300 miles out. And I'd go through an awful lot of small towns in Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina where there are just a handful of factories still left. And while my truck was being loaded or unloaded, I'd have some time to go and look at these towns. And all of these little towns are just so cute. And they all look like the 50s, the Eisenhower era was their heyday. I mean, they all have that architecture. But now, all of these cute little downtown areas are all boarded up. I mean, there are a handful of businesses that are struggling to survive there. And yet, all of the streets leading in, all the roads leading into these towns are filled with McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, car parts stores, Walmart. I mean, all of these things. And I started to think, what's going on here? What's different now? Why were things so much better in the 50s and the 60s in these towns, and they're worse now? And it's because of those businesses, those international businesses that national or international businesses are basically bleeding all of the dollars out of every single town. When you look at the way the economies worked in these towns back in the 50s and 60s, there were a number of individuals maybe or families that owned the biggest businesses, grocery stores, hardware store, lumber store, bank, things like that. And those people would take all their profits that they were getting from their businesses and recycle them into the community. They would help start other businesses. They would give out loans and things like that. It wasn't until probably the 70s or so when Wall Street and stock investments became a big thing for everybody. And an awful lot of those people that were running those businesses at that time started to invest their money outside of their communities. And then all of these other national, international companies started to come in and bled out other dollars. So now all these little towns out there that are all over the countryside, who are these people? They're Trump voters because their towns have been drained dry of dollars and they see no hope whatsoever. And so they saw Trump as, well, he's at least talking about us, and worst case, we're throwing a hand grenade into the system here and let's see what happens. So I came up with this concept of what I call local community mutual funds, thinking that most metropolitan areas, even small ones like Charleston here, I'm in Beaufort right now, there's probably a few $billion of investment money, retirement investment money here in this Beaufort area of South Carolina. How would we bring some of those dollars, maybe all of them, back to this local community to invest again? The same sort of idea as the job guarantee, where entrepreneurs could apply for funds, and then people that invested locally could actually decide who they're going to spread these funds out to. So this idea of local community mutual fund was it's a financial instrument that to become a member of it, you just need to invest a few $100s or a few $1,000s, and then you have a vote on where those dollars go. And maybe every month, and maybe it's a continuous ongoing process, because we can do all this stuff online. It's kind of like GoFundMe. People would be applying with business opportunities, and maybe some of them are looking for equity investments. So they actually want us to buy stock in their company. Others are looking for debt investments. They just want to get a loan. And others are grants. And this is the important thing. Grants would be, we never expect the money to come back, but they're for organizations that are really needed. For example, I have a friend who was in prison for 9 years. And when he got out, completely changed his life around. He goes to local high schools, or he was for a while going to local high schools until he had to actually earn a living, and was fantastic at talking local kids out of gang life, lives of crime. I mean, all that stuff. He was just so good at it. And I would love to be able to give him a grant for $50,000, $60,000 a year, maybe $100,000 a year, just to keep on doing that and go to high schools all the time, because he was improving the lives of the next generations more than anything else that we could all do. So where would somebody get a grant like that? So this is the idea. The local community mutual fund would be, you're not investing your dollars in Wall Street for maximum returns. You're investing your dollars in your local communities for maximum returns in local communities. So when you actually retire in 20 or 30 years, your community is still a place you want to live in, instead of moving down to Florida at the end of this whole thing.
Well, I hope to see you ladies on Sunday.
I love it. I absolutely love that concept, and people definitely do in the comments as well. Let's see. What is something on your platform we haven't touched on that you want to address?
Income inequality, I guess. Income, wealth inequality. I mean, that's one of the big things that's going to destroy our civilization sooner than anything else. So let me go back. In 2016, I said I didn't do anything by the book. I didn't knock on doors. I didn't make phone calls. Nobody did any of that stuff on my behalf. What I did do was I built this funny little boat out of a 14-foot canoe that I had. It was a sailing boat with a outrigger, and I built wheels on it that were removable, and a solar panel, and a big mast on the back that had a flashing red light, and what I call my Bubba protector, an American flag waving off the back. So. And then I have a folding bicycle that I got when I was driving trucks. And so I designed this thing so there's a place for the bike to fit in the back. So the first Congressional District of South Carolina is basically 20 islands and peninsulas. And it's been so gerrymandered that to get from one peninsula or one island to another, you need to drive about 60 miles out of the district and then come back in. And so I thought, why don't I just try to stay in the district entirely for 70 days, 80 days, or something like that. The only way you can do that is you can ride your bike across one island or one peninsula, get in your boat, and then paddle across or sail across to the other island, the other peninsula. So I did that. And so I towed this whole boat contraption. It weighed about 300 pounds or so behind my little folding bike. I just put a trailer hitch on the back. And so I did this for 80 days in 2016 and 1,000 miles. And it was a great experience. And you said earlier that you could see me as a vagabond, a nomad. Well, that's what I was. I did I mean, I literally just slept on people's couches, and so many days I didn't have a plan, and I didn't know where I was going to be spending that night. I think there were probably 3 nights where I ended up just sort of sleeping somewhere under the stars or on a porch or something like that. But the rest of the time, I'd usually run into people that would say, "Hey, what are you doing?" You know, and I explain it, and they go, "What? Do you need a place to stay?" And so, yeah, for like 77 out of 80 days, that's what I did, and it was great. And I talked to hundreds of people along the way. I'd park my whole rig in front of Walmart or grocery stores, and I finally settled on, after a couple of weeks, this question. I said, what 1 or 2 things could the federal government do to make your life better? What 1 or 2 things could Washington do to make your life better? And when you frame the question that way, people don't come back and say, don't take my guns away, or abortion, or, immigrants. They go, you know what? I haven't had health insurance in years, or I can't afford health insurance. Or they'd say, I haven't been able to save a penny for my retirement, and I'm going to be relying on Social Security, but I know my Social Security payments aren't going to be enough for me to actually live on. Or they'd say, down here we have 90,000 veterans living in the 1st Congressional District, so everybody knows a veteran. And so they'd say, veterans are getting shafted. The VA is not working well for them. Or education. So those are the big 4. It was health insurance, Social Security, veterans benefits, and education. And I'd say to everybody, unless we get big money out of politics, we can't fix any of these things. And they all agreed. So that became my platform in 2016, those 5 things. And that's what I'm sticking with for this year, for 2018. I'm adding 2 things, and the 2 are climate change, rising seas. My district, the average elevation above sea level of my district is like 6 feet. And so this district will most likely in 50 years be gone, or at least most of it will be gone. It'll be underwater at high tide twice a day. And so everybody down here knows that in the 1st Congressional District. And even if they deny global warming, they recognize that the seas are rising and it's going to be a serious problem. So that's the 6th thing here. My hand, sixth thing. And then the 7th thing is income and wealth inequality. And I've been reading some things over the past couple of years. And when you look at the collapse of pretty much every civilization that's existed before ours, it has always coincided with wealth and income inequality. Basically, it gets to this point where there's a tiny fraction of people that are the elite, and there's a huge fraction of people that are the commoners, and the elite don't understand what's happening to the commoners, and one thing or another collapses society. It's an invasion from somewhere else, or it's ecological collapse, or something like that. And typically what happens is, and the way civilizations recover is, you have millions of people dying off. I mean, there's some huge cataclysm that happens. I don't want that to happen. And so I'm really I'm really concerned about making sure that we can fix that before things get really bad.
Absolutely. Mark is one of our RP fellas. He said he hopes everyone is paying attention to this. And people are feeling you in these comments, Dimitri. I'm not kidding. Like, people are really, really feeling what you're saying. And, I really don't do this, you guys, because it's not like, I'm not a campaign manager, but, we don't always have, candidates like this. I interview a lot, but they don't always live up to their platform or the personality I thought they would have, or what have you. So, there are so many positive comments about Dimitri. So I really encourage you guys to recommend him to people in his state. And also, if you could throw him a few dollars, I really would love to at least see him get back what he put in, just to show him that we appreciate what he's doing, because more people need to be doing it. So I usually don't do that, but I kind of felt inspired. What if you want to leave something with our audience, what is the one thing you want to leave them with to inspire them to go to your website and recommend you and things like that, and hopefully phone bank for you or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people say, what can one person do in Congress to make a difference? And what I've found is, now that I've run, this is the third time. I ran in 2014 just as a write-in. And after that, I had a number of friends run for local offices. Because of that, they were inspired just that, this crazy guy can do it, then I can do it too. And some of them have actually won office. And then the same thing happened in 2016. And I think a lot of, while we hope we can get into office and do good, the reality is it may take a number of times to do this. And, persistence is a good thing. So my third time, hopefully this is the charm, but maybe it'll take another time, a fourth time to actually get in there. But I hope I can inspire more people. And my hope is that if I do win this primary, and the primary, so people know, is Tuesday, June 12th, in case there's somebody here from South Carolina interested in this thing. Tuesday, June 12th, if I win the primary, and then I am, again, the Republican candidate, and Republican heads are going to be exploding all over the country, and then I can probably win the general election pretty easily at that point. And
you'll be coming back on. So
like what? Oh,
you'll
okay.
be coming back on. I'm not asking, I'm just kind of telling you. That you will be.
Right.
Before I forget, when is registration due by? You
have to register to vote by May 11th. May 11th is the deadline. May 13th online, May 11th in person. And online registration here in South Carolina is really easy to do. So hopefully people will do that. So here's the thing: if I get into Congress as one guy, and I'd be the Republican, I'd be an independent at that point. So it'd be me, Bernie, and Angus King. Is that it? We're the only three independents in Congress. And I'd vote with the Black Caucus. I'd vote with the Progressive Caucus. I'd vote with probably the Democrats on most things. If the Republicans actually become sane, I'd vote with them on certain things. Rand Paul actually has a couple of things I would agree with, strangely. And there's a few other Republicans out there that occasionally have some pretty sensible stuff going on. And again, I don't want to be all the way to one side or the other. I will work with whoever I need to work with to get specific things done out there. But mostly, this is the thing. As a newcomer into Congress, you can't get shit done. There's nothing. Nobody's going to listen to me, especially, Bernie knows what this is all about, So the best thing I could do is be on your show every single week, Joy. And more than that, I'd try to get onto every television show every week for 2 years while I'm out there and inspire other people to run. We need to have 300, 400 new candidates who are thinking like I'm thinking, or thinking like we are thinking, running in 2020. And maybe 100 of those people win. And then we have not a majority, but we still have a super minority. And then we do the same thing again in 2022. And now suddenly we have 300 new people in Congress, and we can get shit done. And we can finally put an end to fossil fuels. We can demand that fossil fuels are ended, and we have to switch over to biofuels immediately. We can change everything at that point and fix things for the next generation. So that's really what I'm hoping, that while I probably won't be able to accomplish a whole lot in Congress, it's going to be the bully pulpit for me and you and everybody else that's out there, that we can get this message out to the broader audience out there. Because as we know, Bernie's message in general appeals to everybody across the board, and that's one of my hopes this year, that I'm going to be in a number of debates here in the next couple of weeks, And I think it's going to be the
Please
first.
film them. I'll put them on RP.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you.
Definitely film those.
I think it's probably going to be the first time an awful lot of people in the Republican audience that I'll be speaking with have heard these ideas. You know, I think all they're hearing is immigrants, abortion, guns, and they never get to hear about the stuff that really matters. Let me just tell you a quick anecdote. So when I was biking the Low Country, where I rode my bicycle in 2016, a few dozen times, guys that look like me, you know, middle-aged white guys, would come up to me just wanting to fight, like, I hate you people, and Nancy Pelosi, Obama, blah, 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 all this. And the first time it happened, I almost punched this guy back. But after that, I kind of learned to zen out, relax. And I kept asking that question, what one or two things could Washington do to make your life better? And after about 10 minutes of ranting and raving, most of these guys would finally come back and say one of those things. You know, I'm a veteran and I'm getting shitty support, or, you know, I haven't had medical insurance, or one of those things would come back. And we'd have a good conversation. And by the end of the conversation, 95% of these guys would say, you know what? I've never met a Democrat before. You're a pretty good guy. I'm going to vote for you and Trump. And that's what they said. And, you know, it was just that they hadn't heard the story. And you know, they didn't think anybody cared about it.
Exactly. It's amazing what changes people when you actually take a moment to speak to them. That's definitely something you're learning for sure. That's amazing.
Show concern for everybody. That's it.
Absolutely. We need more empathy in our country desperately. Thank you guys so much for watching, as usual. Dimitri, one last time, why don't you give your website, your Twitter, your Facebook, all that fun stuff.
So
they did put your donation link in the comments.
Website.
A couple people wanted it.
Cherny for Congress. ChernyForCongress.us. And I mean, you can Google me. I'm up there, and I'm on Facebook, Cherny for Congress, and Instagram. I think I'm Dimitri Cherny on Instagram, and on Twitter, I'm Cherny 4 Congress. But I'm out there, easy to find.
Awesome. Well, we definitely wish you the best of luck. This is going to be quite exciting. Definitely film those debates. I'm serious. I will put them up for everyone to see. And we wish you the best. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Monday, I actually have someone from my state. I have a guy who's running for governor of Pennsylvania as a Green. His name is Paul Glover. So I'll have him Monday at 9. So thank you again, Dimitri, and thank you again to the viewers. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye.